for light bombing duties, for patrol work, night fighter missions against Zeppelins and so forth. Losses were grievous until improved Allied fighters came along to counter the German types. The BE-2's performance was much criticised, especially its poor manoeuvrability.
With me I have Tim, who's from the Hawker Typhoon Preservation Group.
Tim, tell me about spanning mechanical, avionics, weapons, survival equipment disciplines, as well as human factors and even expedient repair. Some 2,000 students graduate annually, ready to serve in the Royal Air Force of today and the Royal Air Force of tomorrow. Many of those students are here on the showground, and this really is a great opportunity to actually have a chat, to meet people that serve with your Royal Air Force, both past and present. A very rare opportunity. In days gone by, we used to have the RAF at home days across the UK. German Army that operated it for so many years in the anti-tank and utility roles. Or now, thanks to the Flying Bulls, that incredible collection of historic aeroplanes backed by the energy drink Red Bull and based in incredible facilities, particularly the display hangar 7 at Salzburg Airport in Austria. And here, taking off to gain a little bit of height before starting his display, we've got their chief helicopter pilot, Siegfried Schwarz, nicknamed Blackie. And he's about to show what he can do with the Messerschmitt Bürkow Blom Bull 105C. Rigid rotor that helps give the Bull 105 this remarkable aerobatic performance. Been exploited to the full in contests and displays over the years. And now the Flying Bulls have got 2 of these on strength at Salzburg. 2 more, sponsored by Red Bull, are based in Los Angeles for displays in North America. And they thrill all over the world. This is the first time we've seen this display at Cosford. And my goodness me, it doesn't disappoint. Surprisingly, given performance like this, Blackie Schwarz in 2015 defended his title as freestyle world champion at the 15th Helicopter World Championships in Poland. He's a man with an immense amount of rotary wing experience on different helicopters. He was trained in the very demanding discipline of helicopter aerobatics by another of the Flying Bulls pilots, Rainer Wilke. He left German Army
helicopter instructor who displayed the Ball 105 in the Army.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is worth remembering that even though the winds down here might not be very strong, that does not mean that it's the same case up at the heights they're currently jumping from. So take into consideration how much effort they're having to put in order to keep that nice, neat stack display, which today is looking absolutely superb as it is. And heading down towards the ground, you've got Sergeant Lee Coonan with that RAF 100 flag. For those of you that like the colour, I've been told it is candy apple red, and he's also got a different canopy. He's got the RAF canopy. We've been really lucky today with the weather, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and the team have put on a fantastic display for you today. Or to do those final calculations to make sure that they can land nice and safely and securely.
Get along to this, right, stay in.
30 years long, 10 years after the
So I mentioned earlier that at the bottom of the stack is the team coach, with the top the officer commanding, and the rest of the team are made up of the third teams are closest to the bottom, second teams in the middle, and the first years, the newest members to the team, are at the top. Ladies and gentlemen, as the parachuters approach the drop zone, they'll be able to hear you, so please put your hands together as encouragement and to show your appreciation for the skills demonstrated by the RAF Falcons during today's display. So as they break off to land, I'll let you know who's landing in order. So first to land will be Flight Sergeant Dave Warboys, team coach. He'll be followed by Sergeant John Veach, Corporal Dom Hodge, Sergeant Dan Cartwright, Corporal Sean Kilkenny, Corporal Chris West, Sergeant Shane Phipps, and finally, Officer Commanding the Royal Air Force Falcons, Flight Lieutenant Dave Sellers. Ladies and gentlemen, as they've landed, they'll be securing their parachutes, removing their harnesses, helmets and smoke.
The Great War, as it was known then, entered its fourth year. Place names such as Ypres, Mons, Somme and Verdun had already entered the history books. And it was in the early days of the Great War that air power found its first role, and that role was reconnaissance. What is the enemy doing? What is going on over the hill? So this new fangled invention called the aircraft was put to use. Balloons had been tried with limited success before that, but in a fixed-wing aircraft you could actually fly over enemy territory, have a look, take pictures, bring them back. And that was vital intelligence. But of course, whilst you were doing that, the enemy was trying to do exactly the same to you. So inevitably, opposing forces started arming their aircraft. And whilst I want to take photos of your territory, I want to stop you, and I will do that by force. Hitting the silk, taking to the parachute rather than staying and fighting. This cost also, you had an appalling decision to make.
So the first 4 aeroplanes in our flight through 100 years of RAF history are in the air. The initial pair, 2 examples of the Royal Aircraft Factory SE-5A. There's another one of those from the team in the static display as well. Then we've got the Avro 504K and another Royal Aircraft Factory design, the BE-2C. All hugely significant aircraft during the First World War and as the RAF was formed and went into its first period of peacetime existence from November 1918. As I mentioned, the last of those 4 aircraft that are now forming up in front of us is the BE-2C, which is the oldest of these 4 designs. BE stands for Blériot Experimental, but it was actually designed by Geoffrey de Havilland, a name that would come into much sharper focus later in the RAF's history. First appeared in 1912, and in early tests over Salisbury Plain, the first prototype of the BE-2 pioneered the airborne correction of artillery fire, and that's a role that aircraft have gone on to play over the whole of 100 years or more. The BE-2A and B models were deployed early on to France in 1914, and it was in a BE-2B that Second Lieutenant William Rhodes more trainers, but there were some core reconnaissance squadrons that used them, and the E models. Here they come in front of us, starting off with the 2 SE-5As, then the Avro 504K and the BE-2C from the Bremont Great War Display Team. The SE-5A's on the brake. And then the rather slower, more lumbering forms of the 504 and the BE-2C. There's the BE-2 pulling off to the right and the 504 to the left. The Avro 504 must go down as one of the most outstanding aircraft of the RAF's 100-year existence if we were to pick out particular highlights. It first flew in 1913 and nearly 9,000 had been produced by the war's end. That was more than any other single aircraft type of the 1914 to 18 conflict. This is the aircraft that's about to run in from our left. It was used as a bomber, as a home defense fighter, an artillery spotter and more, but perhaps the 504 was best known during and after hostilities as a trainer.
And the 504 introduces a thread that will run throughout today. We have an incredible range of training aircraft, both past, present and future, both fixed wing and rotary. For so many, it was the 504 where it all started.
In frontline terms, it was a 504 of the Royal Flying Corps that was the first British aircraft to be shot down after war broke out in 1914. 504s of the Royal Naval Air Service bombed the German Zeppelin airship factories at Friedrichshafen in November 1914, and the first one to be delivered to the Royal Naval Air Station at Eastchurch conducted a daring raid on the submarine base, German submarine base at Bruges, that December. By the time of the 1918 armistice, about 3,000 504s were in service, mostly trainers. They had a mixture of rotary and radial engines, and they were mainstays of the Central Flying School, RAF Flying Training Schools, and University Air Squadrons until the early 1930s. Leading in the BE-2C and the Avro 504K, which is a replica built by the Pursang company in Argentina. So they're departing off slot in the 2 SE-5As in today's display. We had Dave Linney and Mike Collett. The BE-2C, which is owned by Matthew Boddington and Steve Slater, was in Matthew's hands today. And then we had retired British Midland and British Airways airline captain Mark Johnson in the 504K, which is owned by Eric Verdon Roe, the grandson of the Avro company founder Sir Elliot Verdon Roe. What a way to start our RAF 100, RAF Cosford Air Show.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we slow down the pace. This is going to be a display of the glorious de Havilland Tiger Moth aircraft of the Tiger 9 display team. My name is Tim Emrys Roberts. I'm a former member of the University of Wales Air Squadron, and I'm the proud owner of the aircraft number flying number 7 position. Now this is an important aircraft in that it was the main trainer for those in Britain and in the Commonwealth in the early interwar years and for the late interwar years and throughout the Second World War. The team is an amateur team, but leading the team is Jeff Wilson, former Royal Air Force fast jet pilot, originally on Southampton University Air Squadron flying Bulldogs. He then went to do 2 tours on Phantoms with 111 Squadron, and then was in the Falkland Islands again with Phantoms on 23 Squadron. And indeed he used to fly the black Phantom that's actually in the static display here today. He's now captain on the BA A320 Airbus. So if you're going on holiday, listen out for his name. And it's actually his birthday today. On his right is Mike Vasey, who's the founder of Vintech, which is a company that looks after these vintage engines. On his left is Steve Bowhill-Smith, a former Concorde pilot, who's had what must be any aviator's best day out, where one day he went and flew a
display of this very important aircraft in Royal Air Force history. I mentioned earlier that we do have a large number of RAF training aircraft, both fixed wing and rotary, on display for you today, and this certainly from RAF gone by, a very, very important aircraft. So just a few moments while we let the Tiger team land on. If you have just arrived, a very warm welcome to the Royal Air Force Cosford Air Show 2018 in this very special 100th year for the Royal Air Force. Can I please remind you to make sure you're putting plenty of suntan cream on, you're drinking plenty of water, you're keeping your property with you at all times, you're not dropping any litter. Please help us keep Cosford nice and neat and tidy. So we are about to move on to the last display in the first 25-year segment.
She's horrible. I hate her. She didn't do it.
A very special item indeed. And when we look back, the Royal Air Force nearly didn't survive to its first birthday. The war to end all wars was over, just over 7 months after the Royal Air Force was formed. We certainly needed the Army and the Navy to protect the mainland and also the Empire, but the Air Force, at the end of the First World War, the British Empire was at its largest and most unruly. I think the discussion about the rights and wrongs of an empire is for another day, but whilst we had the Empire, it needed to be policed, a job that had always been done by the Army, and as you can imagine, that was a huge task. Condition in the world.
It was delivered to number 43 Squadron at Tangmere in 1936. It was named Queen of North and South and flown regularly by Air Chief Marshal Sir Frederick Rosier, who was then a flight lieutenant. He went on to become a distinguished wartime pilot and post-war
The Hawker Fury.
Be back at one of the Hendon pageants or displays of the 1930s in watching this aircraft going through its paces. Just 117 Fury 1s like this were built for the RAF, and the squadrons that flew them, starting with number 43 Squadron based at Tangmere, put on spectacular displays, sometimes tied together in formation. 303 Squadron, in fact, was the first unit to bring the Fury into RAF service. This Mark I has a 525 horsepower Rolls-Royce Kestrel supercharged V12 piston engine. The Mark II took power to 640 horsepower from a further enhanced Kestrel. Only 98 of those Mark IIs were built, and just 6 RAF squadrons flew Furies, but they included some of the most famous fighter squadrons of their day. And it was a sign of the times when, around the period of the Munich crisis in 1938, caused by Germany's annexation of the Sudetenland, when aircraft of the RAF fighter squadrons of the day, including the Fury that we see here, and the Gladiator that you can see on static display, began to receive camouflage. The threat of war was increasing.
The Operational Requirements Branch of the Royal Air Force, he applied some sound engineering principles to the science of bringing down enemy bombers. Both the Spitfire and Hurricane, both armed with the 303 Browning machine gun, the 303 round, fairly small, standard small caliber round. And a number of experiments and some theoretical physics showed that you needed to really keep a bomber in your sights for up to 2 seconds to actually bring it down. Most fighters at the time were armed with just 2 machine guns, which meant that a bomber had a very good chance, even though taking damage, of actually escaping. So Ralph Sawley made the huge leap of going from 2 Browning machine guns to 8 Browning machine guns. And I think it's fair to say we're all glad that the Air Ministry listened to that advice, as both the Hurricane and the Spitfire were then upscaled to be equipped with 8 machine guns. This aircraft, very much based on the Hawker Fury you've just seen, owes a lot to the same design. In fact, Hawkers had a look at the Fury and toyed with the idea of taking one of the wings off and seeing what that would produce. Very much the, certainly from a fighter point of view, the era of the biplane coming to the end, the era of the monoplane coming to the fore.
And we see just such a monoplane here, representing in our display today initially the Battle of France period, which is also represented in the static park by a genuine Battle of France veteran in the form of an aircraft that served with France's Armée de l'Air during that period in 1940, the Curtiss Hawk 75 of the fighter collection from Duxford. This aircraft also from Duxford, the Hawker Hurricane 1 of Anglia Aircraft Restorations, operated by Air Leasing, and it too is a veteran of that time. By May 1940, this Hurricane was operational with number 245 Squadron. It was based at Drem on Scotland's east coast, carrying out shipping protection patrols. Then later, the unit was assigned to help cover the Dunkirk evacuation, Operation Dynamo. The aircraft was engaged during the course of those operations by a Luftwaffe Messerschmitt Bf 109. The fire from the 109 brought the aircraft down. The pilot was badly injured. A crash landing was made on the beaches at Dunkirk, and there it stayed until 1988 when the airframe was recovered. It was subject to an extremely lengthy restoration, which was completed by Hawker Restorations. The aircraft took to the air once again last summer for its maiden post-restoration flight, so we're delighted to see it displaying here at Cosford today. The first aircraft in our World at War segment of the RAF Cosford Air Show flying programme, the Hawker Hurricane 1, running in from the right.
force that was deployed from the UK to France the day before the UK declared war on Germany. We saw the Hurricane, and this was one of the bombers that was also deployed, the Bristol Blenhiem.
There's a remarkable story behind the development of what became the Blenheim. A large number of great aeroplanes started out as a result of private ventures on the part of their manufacturers, and so it was in this case. Lord Rothermere, the owner of the Daily Mail, sought a high-speed transport and funded a design from the Bristol Aeroplane Company, the Type 142. Rothermere presented... and so beautifully and smoothly and elegantly flown as ever by John Romaine, the boss of the Aircraft Restoration Company. He's off back home to Duxford.
So as the Blenheim clears
at behind 186 miles an hour. Not surprisingly, potential was seen in the design for a new long-range fighter, and that was the Blenheim 1F, as we see represented here. The workshops of the Southern Railway in Ashford made a ventral gun pack with 4 .303-inch Browning machine guns to fit to the Blenheim 1F, F for fighter. And that aircraft started its service with number 25 Squadron in December 1938. And this, the world's sole airworthy Blenheim, has been completed now in this short-nosed form as a Mark I and in fighter configuration. Before that, it was in long-nosed Mark IV form, this aircraft. Mark IV had a larger navigator station. It too served both as a bomber and as a fighter. And when World War II was declared on the 3rd of September 1939, more Blenheims were in RAF service, nearly 1,100 of them, than any other single aircraft type. And the earliest frontline RAF actions of World War II all involved Blenheims on the 3rd of September.
We'll move straight on with the next display item. I was going to say one of the highlights. I think every item we have today is a highlight. Pretty certain you won't have seen anything quite like this next display. From the flying balls, it is a helicopter display. The BO-105 doing things that only a 105 can really do. And even then, I think it just defies many of the physical laws. The idea of using a fast monoplane fighter reconnaissance had been suggested before the Second World War, but in 1939, all fighters were needed for home defence. Eventually, 2 Spitfire Mark I's were given to a gentleman by the name of Sidney Cotton. He was an interesting character as both an aviation and photographic pioneer. He went on to form the RAF's Photo Development Unit and incidentally also devised the characteristic PR balloon used by most RAF reconnaissance aircraft. These 2 converted Spitfires were the vanguard. Nearly 1,000 other Spitfires would follow, either converted fighters or built from scratch for the reconnaissance role. And they were able, later on in the war, to roam as far as Berlin, providing the Royal Air Force with a vital capability throughout the war. Amongst the many vital reconnaissance missions flown during the Second World War include the discovery of coastal German radar installations in the subsequent commando raid at Brunivale in order to steal one, the confirmed identification of V2 rockets at Peenemünde on the Baltic coast. Indeed, we have a V2 on display in one of the hangars today. And then, of course, the battle damage assessment mission of the dams attacked during the Dam Busters raid in May 1943.
And in the ground displays also we have another Spitfire PR11 from the Aircraft Restoration Company, which has got with it a display of various wartime reconnaissance cameras to give you a bit more of an idea as to the equipment that was used in that vital role. This particular PR11 from the Hangar 11 collection that we see flying served during wartime with number 16 Squadron Royal Air Force. Andy was just mentioning were particularly important in the lead up to D-Day, the 6th of June 1944, and the operations record book for number 16 Squadron, today held in the National Archives, gives an idea. It says, "The great day at last, D-Day. Even though from the tempo of things recently, the squadron has been saying to themselves any minute now, it was still a surprise, except for the CO, whom we suspect had a clue." Weather, it went on, was most unkind. Out of 16 sorties, only 4 were high level and the remaining 12 low beneath fairly solid cloud engine Spitfires, if not the fastest. This very airframe flew more than 40 operational missions in its career with number 16 Squadron to such highly defended German targets as Osnabrück, Bremen, Dortmund, Hanover, Hamburg, Kiel and the capital Berlin. Final pass then, from the Hangar 11 collection, Spitfire PR11.
Reconnaissance continues to be a vital role for today's Royal Air Force. Just about by satellite, the pilot has to look over the top of this long engine cowling. It's kind of like driving your car with the bonnet open. So a curved approach is made, enabling the pilot to keep the runway in sight for as long as possible before kicking straight at the last moment.
And the pilot there was Peter Teichmann, founder of the Hangar 11 collection, and we've been talking today about firsts, aircraft that we've seen for the first time. Wainuapai Airfield, which is otherwise known as Royal New Zealand Air Force Base, Auckland. Captaining the aircraft today, Squadron Leader Ben Woodhouse, Flight Lieutenant Nick Hall is the co-pilot, Corporal Amelia Wilson, the loadmaster, and Flight Lieutenant Jenna Beldock, the third pilot.
Take a picture of Peter. He's coming this far.
A very important role of the Royal New Zealand Air Force during the Second World War was actually training Allied aircrew as part of the Empire Air Training Scheme. It's very difficult to train aircrew in your own country when that country is at war. New Zealand being very distant, generally having good weather, meant that Allied pilots could be shipped out, put through a very intensive training program before being returned to the UK to join combat with the rest of their colleagues in the Royal Air Force. Many New Zealanders served with the Royal Air Force during the Second World War. Indeed, towards the rear of the showground, away to the right-hand side, there's an excellent exhibition of the famous and the not so famous, but equally laudable New Zealanders who served with the Royal Air Force. Some of the more well-known, Flying Officer Cobber Kane, who was actually the first Royal Air Force ace of the war. To reach ace, you had to confirm destroy 5 enemy aircraft. He joined the Air Force in 1936 and was actually deployed to France, where he flew and fought with distinction, and unfortunately was to lose his life in
Hang on. Let's try that. No. Can't get it back now.
Is such a big aeroplane to display, you know.
No, she saw, you know those planes we saw in the what was this one?
Now, Red Alice.
Oh my goodness. The
You should see the ones that are traveling.
Yeah, like that's a small one as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, that's small. That's why I mean you've got double neck like jumping. Yeah. Like they can't jump.
I never think about it. Has anyone actually seen it?
I've seen Lancaster. I've seen videos of it because it came up on our RS. Oh
Yeah, I've got history lessons throughout the
yours would never actually get so I like, what's so special about dampers? I thought that every squadron was special with dampers because someone else would be like city buses.
How's that?
Oh yeah, I see it. I just looked over, I was like, you need to let your pocket out.
Yeah.
I'll send you guys So which one's is that one? Will you get them all out?
I bet he does.
And Shaggy's going out.
That's what I remember from last year.
Alex is not at all interested in my
I hope they're not breaking up that.
Oh, that's beautiful.
See the first of the line of stern formation with the Dakota leading and the Lancaster trailing.
Could be here somewhere.
Ladies and gentlemen, get your cameras ready as you see the fighters coming for a crowd centre arrival. This is the start of the fighter display, as you'll see the tail chase, passes, and this is the victory roll. Today the Spitfire. The Spitfire is flying today. MK356 was built in Castle Bromwich. Suffering 3 wheel landings over 60 operational sorties, she was eventually left behind in France as the squadron moved on after D-Day. She's painted in a desert camouflage colour representing the Mark 9 Spitfire operated by number 92 Squadron. Is the newest member of our flight. Beginning his first season this year, Squadron Leader Mark Sugden, or Suggs. He was previously posted to Valley in 2007 on instructional duties on the Hawk T1, and then in 2010 he was chosen as one of the pilots to stand up the new Hawk T2. He was posted to Typhoon, where he's seen operational tours in Syria and Iraq, inscripted the last of the many. In 1950, she entered the King's Cup Air Race, achieving second place by Group Captain Townsend. During the 1960s, she was flown by the famous Bill Bedford OVE AFC and appeared in the Battle of Britain Memorial film in March 1972. So ladies and gentlemen, get your cameras ready as we see the Dakota and the Lancaster in the line of stern formation for the second time, coming at D1. Today is flown by Flight Lieutenant Tim Dunlop with the co-pilot Flight Lieutenant Neil Farrell, or Faz. During the war the crew was 7, but luckily there is less call for defensive air gunners and bomber hangers nowadays. Over 7,000 Lancasters were built, but only 2 remain flying in the world. The RAF is lucky enough to have one of them. During the war, Bomber Command suffered the highest loss ratio of any recorded combat. In all, over 55,000 men were killed in Bomber Command. Our flight's aim to commemorate the 120,000 men and women who have given their lives in the service of the Royal Air Force. Twiggs, as he's commonly known, has been on the flight for 10 years. He's a volunteer again and gives his time up and weekends to fly with the BBMF. He has previously flown the Hercules and been an instructor on the King Air. His current primary role is based at RAF Bryce Norton, flying the RAF's newest transport aircraft, the A400M Atlas. Lancaster, the co-pilot Faz, originally flying the Wessex until 2003 when he was retired from service. He became a flying instructor on the Tutor, teaching elementary flying training at RAF Woodvale. In 2008 he converted to the E3D Sentry and has been operational tours over Afghanistan and Libya. He now operates as a flying instructor on the Sentry OCU. The BBMF was established in 1957 by Wing Commander Thompson, who thought that the RAF's most famous air battle should be remembered with 3 Mark 19 Spitfires and 1 Hurricane. This epitomises the commemorative element of the Royal Air Force and the RAF 100 celebrations that are taking place all across this year. So ladies and gentlemen, get ready for the Dakota and Lancaster's second pass. Spitfires, 2 Hurricanes, a Dakota, Lancaster, plus 2 Chipmunks that the fighter pilots use for training. As you can imagine, our small cadre of dedicated engineers is kept very busy, looking after 5 different aircraft types and several different marks. These World War II aircraft are preserved in flying condition as a living tribute to those who served the country. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to welcome the fighters back into the display. As you'll see in the famous victory roll. From May to September, bringing them to displays like this today. In fact, the BBMF is scheduled to appear at around 100 displays this year and over 1,000 flypasts, would you believe. Ladies and gentlemen, get your cameras ready and give the pilots a wave as they come in for the bomber break. gentlemen, that was the bomber brain. As you can imagine, there are many people tirelessly working behind the scenes to make all of this happen. Our main sponsor Air Show comes from the public relations team who volunteer in their own time to speak about the aircraft and pass on our history to everyone here today. They're located next to the RAF Red Arrows in the RAF Village. Back at Coningsby, the Visitor Centre volunteers provide great knowledge of the aircraft and tours can be arranged throughout the year to come and see our engineers working on the aircraft when they're not in the sky. So to see, ladies and gentlemen, the Lancaster coming in for the bomber path with the two fighters trailing it. I'll catch up with her as she comes round. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you'll all agree what a fantastic sight it is to see the Lancaster with the bomb bay doors open as a fighter flanker. If you'd like to know more about the flight or the Royal Air Force, you can find us on the RAF website or just Google RAF BVMF. You can also follow us on Twitter, and many of our aircrew travel and tweet on their own accounts, such as BVMF_Spitfire. If you ever want to see any great photos, you can find us and what we're doing on Facebook and our official site at bvmf.official. Ladies and gentlemen, as the fighters and the bombers have gone through to their final pass, we hope you enjoyed our display. I'm not sure if there is a more evocative or stirring sound. Our motto is lest we forget, and we hope you will remember our mission to commemorate those 120,000 personnel who have given their lives in the service of the Royal Air Force. Ladies and gentlemen, the Royal Air Force Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. Incredible that this aeroplane should be flying again. An example of what was the first British-designed helicopter to see RAF service. It was designed by a team under Raoul Hafner, an Austrian emigre who joined the Bristol Aeroplane Company post-war. The first couple of prototype Bristol 171s flew with the Pratt & Whitney Wasp Junior engine, but all production examples, including this one, whether military or civil, switched to the Alvis Leonides 9-cylinder air-cooled radial with some 550 horsepower. The first deliveries were in 1951, the Sycamore HC-11 version to the Army. The RAF followed with the Mark 12, the HR-12 for search and rescue, and then the anti-submarine reconnaissance role followed with RAF Coastal Command. It was with the Mark 13 that the Sycamore came into regular Royal Air Force search and rescue service, now as part of Fighter Command in 1953, and it was the first dedicated search and rescue squadron in the RAF number 275 squadron who had the honour, with a Sycamore like this, of leading the Queen's Coronation Review flypast at RAF Odium in 1953. Sycamores equipped search and rescue units around the country at North Coats, Horsham St Faith, Thornaby, Chivenor and Lucas. And they were important overseas as well. Customers. One of them was West Germany, and this one was built in 1957 for the Luftwaffe as a VIP transport. It was used also as a rotary wing trainer and a search and rescue platform. It spent some time with the German Navy, the Marineflieger, on rescue duty. Then it was back with the Luftwaffe until it was struck off charge in 1969. Many retired German military Sycamores joined the civil register. This one was acquired by a gentleman called Karl Müller of Mellinghausen in Lower Saxony. And it's flown in very appropriate company, as it has done here with the super range of vintage helicopters we've got at this airfield today.
An amazing range of helicopters. I had a little walk through the hangars this morning. It's been a year or so since I've had a good look around and I was still amazed. So please try and find time today. Of course, the museum is open all year round. If you do run out of time today,
at the end of the afternoon.
Absolutely. And I was thinking last night of what really got me into aviation, why I eventually joined the Air Force, what is that spark? And I think seeing the AP at Farnborough was probably it, and thinking that is something special, I want to be involved with something like that. So it was amazing to see it here again. We have had it out on display at previous shows. It is one of those aircraft I see and I literally stop dead in my tracks.
Absolutely beautiful, and you might consider the experimental aircraft program. British Aerospace from the mid-80s. The ultimate purely British-built fighter design, because of course it was not a collaborative venture, that experimental program, but talking of British aeroplanes, a very good one in the air now.
Indeed, the next display item just airborne in front of you. Really dates back to the early 1950s, where the Royal Air Force realised that it could streamline its training programmes. Eventually, the Jet Provost was developed into an entirely different aircraft.
And this is, of course, just such a Jet Provost T5, the last production Mark, by which time it had been quite significantly developed over those early Mark 1s that Andy was just talking about. The Mark 1 was in some ways a rather absurd looking aircraft with a ridiculous stalky undercarriage that, given that they were operating from some quite bumpy grass airfields on occasion at the time for trading purposes, was not that clever.
Indeed, that stalky aircraft is in the hangar just behind us, and then out the front is a later Mark Jet Provost, and well, the difference is remarkable.
One of the key things they found with those early Jet Provost T1s, though, as strange as they may have looked, was that trainee pilots were going solo quicker on the jet trainer than they had on the piston-engined aircraft that had preceded them. So it was a natural step then to develop the design further.
On the Jet Provost, the instructor and the student sit side by side, just as you would in your car. The other configuration is what we call tandem, one behind the other. Pros and cons for both. Some liked one, some liked the other. You sat side by side, you really couldn't get away with anything as a student. That instructors would know what you were going to do before you actually did it. That kind of sixth sense that good instructors have.
He's very popular with private owners around the world, and elegantly flown for us this Jet Provost T5 from Jet Aerobatics by Chelvin Hibbard.
So indeed, the next display item is already airborne. I mentioned a few moments ago some of the search and rescue helicopters we have on the ground for your enjoyment. Obviously been a very important role fulfilled by the Royal Air Force until very recently. With this one we're going to go back in time to some of the early days of search and rescue, certainly search and rescue using helicopters.
Another part of the burgeoning historic helicopter scene, Westland Whirlwind HAR-10. And another lovely engine note, Andy, that of the Bristol Siddeley Gnome turboshaft engine.
Yes, I'm expecting a full search and rescue demonstration. Something, once again, I think we all took for granted over the years, especially the Sea King. Some of us can remember back to the Wessex, some even as far as the Whirlwind. It was during the early stages of the Second World War that the Royal Air Force found itself very under-equipped to rescue aircrew that had bailed out over the sea. The Royal Air Force Marine Branch was equipped with a range of boats and launches. Most were very old, many undermanned. And the sad fact is that during the Battle of Britain, even with the help of civilian vessels and the support of the Royal Navy, Air Marshal Sir Arthur Bomber Harris created the Directorate of Air Sea Rescue on the 6th of February 1941. And they deployed a range of aircraft. They used the Supermarine Spitfire and the Bolton Paul Defiant to patrol for downed aircrew, both aircraft on display here. And then Avro Ansons to drop supplies and dinghy.
At the Gatto officers' mess one night against members of the Berlin Air Safety Centre, who were a mixture of Americans, British, French and Soviet, the four powers who held sway in Berlin. While I was playing against the Russian colonel, he turned to me and asked very slowly if I was visiting on the Pembroke, then winked. But now, for a big change of pace. Our contribution to the flying today from the Armée de l'Air, the French Air Force, an omni-roll comp.
Oh yeah! I'll have to low down the
Colour on go, says Red One. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the 2018 Red House! Pulling up at 400 knots and 4G, Red One leads big battle formation vertical. As the smoke comes from white, the aircraft moved into short diamond. Over the top of the short diamond loop, you'll see the distinctive platform of the Hawk T1 as the jets descend from 6,000 feet. Typhoon Go calls Red One as the white smoke comes on from 4, 5, 8 and 9. The formation now forming into the shape of the current multi-role fighter aircraft operated by the RAF, the Typhoon. The Typhoon is currently on operations in the Middle East and is deployed to Eastern Europe whilst maintaining 24-hour coverage of the UK skies. As the nose lights come towards us, the smoke is about to come on for the Typhoon roll. As the jets go upside down at 3,000 feet, you can see the distinctive Typhoon platform. The pilots concentrating on Red One as they roll in their symmetrical shape and move away to our left-hand side, ready for the next formation change. On the right of Red One in Typhoon is the first of our new pilots for 2018, Flight Lieutenant John Missions, thanks to his advanced sensors. As the nose lights come on towards us, the smoke is about to come on. It's lightning. As the jets go over the top again at 6,000 feet in the loop, on the far right of the formation we have Chris Lyndon Smith. Chris is a previous Tornado GL4 pilot and Hawk instructor and is in his second tour on the Red Arrows. As the smoke lingers over the top of that loop, Red One is about to bend the formation to the left as they come past us in the Lightning Pass. Red One leading the formation is Squadron Leader Martin Pert. Martin is a previous Harrier and Typhoon pilot and also was a Hawk instructor. This is his second tour on the Red Arrows and is his first year as the leader. Phoenix Go calls Red One as the white smoke comes back on and the jets move into Phoenix formation. Phoenix formation is a very tactically difficult or technically difficult formation to fly, with 6 aircraft flying in line abreast next to each other. On the left of Red One in Phoenix is Squadron Leader Mike Ling. Those of you who are regular airshow attendees will recognise Mike's name as a previous... Ladies and gentlemen, this is Phoenix.
Phoenix moves away to our right-hand side, Red 1 is about to call the formation into our trademark shape.
Hold in the back. Now, tight.
Diamond Go calls Red 1 as the smoke comes back on and the wings of Phoenix sweep back to form our trademark diamond shape. On the far left in Diamond is Flight Lieutenant Dan Lowes. Dan is a former Typhoon pilot and weapons instructor, and this is his second year flying on the Red Arrows. The jet's upside down at 3,000 feet in our trademark shape. The white smoke and the red jet standing out beautifully against the blue skies we have here today at Cosford. Now as the jets move off to the left-hand side with Diamond complete, we are about to see my favourite manoeuvre, and I'm sure many of you will agree with me. This is the manoeuvre that represents the Aboard whispers Red 9 as the jets come towards us with the red and blue smoke on, rolling around the smokes of the other aircraft. Red 1 about to bring the aircraft to the left with a colour change as we see the Tornado. Tornado moves off to our right-hand side. The white smoke is about to come on, and that signifies we're nearing the end of the first half of the show. And so far we've seen graceful 9-ship formation aerobatics. As we go into the second half, we're about to see a change of tempo as we go into the 5 and the 4, and then splitting to the synchro pair and the 7. The nicknames of the 5 and 4, of course, are Enid and Jippo. Enid named after Enid Blyton's famous 5, and Jippo named after the nickname of the first leader of the rear section.
Where's it gone?
Red 1 has just called starting full for the second half. They're now back into Phoenix formation as the aircraft position round, ready for the start. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the centenary split.
One right car, 2 right car, 3 right car.
Ladies and gentlemen, chasing Red 6 and 7 are Reds 8 and 9. As they point the nose down with the white smoke on, there's a closing speed of over 700 miles an hour. All 4 jets about to pass within 100 feet of each other before pulling up in the Jippo Pass. The aircraft have dropped down to an inverted V as Red 9 comes from left to right. Get your cameras ready, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Goose. Power calls Red 1 as Red 9 pulls up with patriotic red, white and blue smoke. The remainder of Enid come past in arrow formation as they position off to the left-hand side. Now, those of you who are very observant will notice that Red 1 is not smoking today, and fortunately he's flying a non-smoking jet due to an unserviceability back at Shawbury. As Enid move off to the left-hand side with white smoke trailing, get your eyes forward to see. Pulling up go Red 6 and 7. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the heart. The white smoke comes on, red 6 and 7 pull down with a nice symmetrical heart shape. Now look up top right to see if you can see red 8. Here he comes, the smoke is about to come on as red 8 spears the heart. As the white smoke goes off, red 8 is by Lieutenant Matt Masters. Matt is a former Tornado F3 air defense pilot. They're going to roll towards us and then carry out the vertical brake.
Hold in the back now.
Brake, brake, go, calls red 1 as the jets fan out in a symmetrical vertical brake. As the smoke goes off, it's time to look for the sinker again, left circus. Pilot 6G working hard against the G-forces of full power. This manoeuvre is named after the engineers that fly in the back seat of our aircraft and is dedicated to all of Circus and especially to JB. As the jets come round for their final nose-to-nose pass, the colours about to go off as simply leave the surface. Formation being flown here is called Leader's Benefit. Red 1 is out to the front, and then reds 2, 3, 4 and 5 are in line abreast behind him. As the first roll of Python finishes, the smoke's about to go to white, and he'll conduct a second roll off to the left. As the white smoke of Python disappears off to the left, red 1 completes the second roll. Meanwhile, Jippo are positioning behind us, ready for the next manoeuvre, which will come in from our right-hand side. Our board calls red 9 as the smokes of red 8 and 9 roll around 6 and 7. As corkscrew completes and goes off to the left-hand side, 2 and 3 roll go calls red 1. As reds 2 and 3 put their blue smoke on, roll to the outside of the formation, to then be replaced by 4 and 5 with the red smoke. Before doing that, own rolls, get your cameras ready, ladies and gentlemen, once again, for the Jippo break. Red 6 and 7 once again, left and right with the white smoke coming on. They're about to pull up, ready for their...
In the background when he makes noises.
Roll go calls red 6 as the jets switch over off to the left and right. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching the Red Arrows. like to find out more about the Red Arrows, then please visit our website, raf.mod.uk/reds. You can follow us on Twitter at RAF Red Arrows or Facebook at RAF Red Arrows. Now, one of the main aims of RAF 100 is to... It's our pleasure. It's always a pleasure to display in front of a big crowd with great weather, especially in the centenary year. And look ahead, ladies and gentlemen, now, the centenary pass marking the RAF 100 year. A little extra treat from the Red Arrows there for you, ladies and gentlemen. Reds 6, 8.
They are the newest, the shiniest, certainly very shiny. Long may that last. And are about to become a very familiar sight in the skies around this part of the UK. And there's a whole generation of helicopter pilots that will be trained on these two airframes before going on to the front line.
And here they come, in from our right. And here we see two representatives of the basic rotary wing trainer, the Airbus Juno, based on the Airbus helicopters H135. That's replacing the Squirrel HT1. The larger example, which you can see an example of in the static park, is the Airbus Jupiter, which
airborne assets and ground assets. So the Tornado was built, optimised for low level, with an airframe and an avionics system that allowed it to operate day and night from saturated target for aircraft. We typically hit the same target within a few seconds of each other. The attack coming from different directions, perfectly.
The development of the Brazilian designed and built Embraer EMB 312 Tucano, produced in revised form by Short Brothers of Belfast. And it's operated by number 72 Reserve Squadron, as I said. That's part of number 1 Flying Training School at Linton-on-Ouse in the basic fast jet training role to both RAF and Royal Navy aircrew. The officer commanding number 72 Squadron, Wing Commander Robbie Lees, flying the aircraft for us today, and with him in the cockpit, Flight Lieutenant Liam Matthews. Turning in for a run and brake to land. This aircraft also now up for replacement, which will start next year, and so trainee pilots will do the elementary phase on the Prefect Typhoon, moving, and of course the F-35 Lightning. Much upgraded cockpits, touchscreen displays, and similar. So once again, the idea is to get pilots used to working in that kind of cockpit at a very early stage. Now with the introduction of the Prefect, the Texan, and the precision guidance weapons such as the various forms of the paveway laser-guided bomb, even some standoff munitions like Storm Shadow, and of course the ordnance that most air forces are in awe of, the Brimstone missile. while the Tornado F3, the air defence variant,
Often hides its ability, power and performance, but it never fails to impress. In the 2018 Chinook display team pilot and aircraft captain is Flight Lieutenant Stu Kinnow-Kinniston. Kinnow is the 27th Squadron operational pilot and training captain. He joined the Royal Air Force in 2007 and was posted to Odium to fly Chinooks in 2011. Since arriving on the force, he played a part in exercises and operations around the globe, including the Falkland Islands and 4 operational detachments to Afghanistan, amassing 1,300 hours on the type. At his home show, Stu would like to say hi to his...
Panavia Tornado GR4.
Oh wow. The Virgo one was pretty, yeah.
We're expecting this to be the first of 2 passes, and we're expecting a slightly slower run on this one, which will probably involve the variable geometry or swing wings being swept forward, as indeed they are. Here it comes, the Tornado GR4. Extended for that pass. We'll now see the wings, I believe, sweeping back. Because we expect a slightly quicker pass to finish this appearance. So a fond farewell to the RAF Cosford Air Show for an aircraft type in RAF service that's made so many appearances here over the years, and so appropriate in this RAF 100-year goodbye to the Tornado GR4.
Need a full jar.
Turbo Union RB199 turbofans in afterburner. A pretty spectacular way for the Tornado in RAF service, at least, to take its leave from this air show before its out of service date in 2019.
And you thought it was fake.
So the Tornado GR4 heading back home.
Into the same airfield. One Atlas has been permanently deployed to the Middle East in support of British forces there, having taken over from the Hercules, and they've often been operating into Ascension in support of British activities in the South Atlantic. The aircraft coming in from our right, and it hails from number 70 Squadron at RAF Bryce Norton, now very much the RAF's airlift air mobility hub, with tanker and transport assets in Oxfordshire.
IT, we don't have to do anything. Music, we don't have to do anything. Art, we don't have to do anything. Science, biology, we just have to do anything. And he's a British accent as well. And English. You forget my yeah. So there's not always much changes.
And here it is, coming in over the tree line, the Atlas C1.
What's this hat?
Wait, you're 10.
I bought the tree on 1 week and then you were trying to
These aircraft succeeding the hard-worked Lockheed Hercules fleet, the C-130K model, which is now out of service, and the newer C-130J, which will be staying in service until 2035. The last Atlas expected to be taken on strength by the RAF during 2021, and again the capabilities gradually being built up. Number 70 Squadron, providing this one, has been employing it on global strategic missions. Number 24 Squadron is training the crews. Number 30 Squadron will reform on the type later this year, and full operational capability in the tactical as opposed to strategic role is due in 2021, but they're working up, doing low-level missions, operations from austere strips, use of night vision goggles and so forth, and they're increasing the number of paratroops that can drop from an Atlas to an eventual 108. A very impressive aeroplane, and good to see it in the air once again over Cosford. And so, as the Atlas clears back to its base at Bryce Norton, one item still remains on the programme, and we're going to bring the show to a suitably loud, exciting and invigorating close on this beautiful evening with what's currently the RAF's premier frontline multi-role fighter. I'm talking, of course, about the Eurofighter Typhoon FGR-4 Flight Lieutenant Jim Peterson, this year's Typhoon display pilot. He's from number 29. This aircraft has replaced no fewer than 7 different platforms with both the French Air Force and the French Navy. It can perform air-to-air, conventional air-to-ground, nuclear strike, reconnaissance, anti-shipping and buddy-buddy refueling missions. And this is a display that takes in the whole gamut. It's starting fast, they're immediate. From the outset for that level of versatility. It's the latest in a long line of Delta Wing Dassault combat jets. The Mirage family, of course, being famous to us all. But it was a significant advance even on the very capable Mirage 2000. And this Delta Canard configuration that you can see was chosen to give the aircraft excellent maneuverability at high angles of attack. Of range and weapons carrying capability, of course the controls are fully fly-by-wire, and that weapons carrying ability has been shown to the full by the French Air Force in its use of the Rafale in several combat theatres in the last few years since it made its debut over Libya during 2011 in what was known to the French as Opération Harmattan. the longest ever combat mission in French Air Force history was mounted. 4 Rafales hit 21 targets in the course of a sortie that lasted 9 hours and 35 minutes, taking the aircraft from their base at Saint-Dizier to N'Djamena in Chad. Well, I said this is a display that changes pace. We've now seen Sébastien put the Rafale's undercarriage down, coming in straight towards us with the landing light blinking. A single roll. And then powering back up to slip back to 988. And now sets up for the slow speed pass coming in from our right. In which the French Air Force's Rafales have been involved, have been in the Central African Republic, and as part of the coalition effort to tackle the so-called Islamic State in Iraq. They're still committed to that operation, flying alongside their counterparts from the French Navy. Show of presence or show of force that Andy was talking about earlier, and Rafales will have performed many of those in the sort of combat theatres they've been engaged in recently. recent times. Coming in for his final pass, he'll be waving the wings, a good opportunity to wave back to Capitaine Sébastien Nativel, call sign Badouk, with the Dassault Rafale C. Absolutely brilliant. specially painted jet for the 2018 season, which they've dubbed the Dark Falcon, and it's got some special Union flag markings on the tail as well. First of the day's slow passers by our fast jets. Bringing those to what we call high alpha, a high angle of attack. See the nose very high, even though the aircraft continues to track a level course. Engine by the aircraft quite like one. By the nature of the smoke being emitted by the smoke. Unlike the MiG-29, the Typhoon and the Rafale that we'll be seeing later in today's programme, the F-16 is a single-engined aircraft, one Pratt & Whitney F-100, but as we can see, very, very capable indeed. Especially in the hands of Captain Aviateur Stefan Darte. Vador started flying with the Belgian Air Cadets 25 years ago. And here he is coming in for a final topside pass. He's departing off to his operating base at RAF Rise Norton, the Belgian air component, F-16AM, fighting Falcon. More from the Belgians and more from plenty of other international air arms later on today.
Yes, indeed.
And there's the break. Our thanks to Dave Fullerton. to describe the display of the MiG-29, I'm going to hand you over to Squadron Leader Marcin Boruta.
And now it's going to get pocket.
Hello everyone, I'm Major Marcin Boruta, maintenance squadron leader from 23rd Air Force Base, Mińsk Mazowiecki, Poland. Today I'm honored to command dynamic show our Polish MiG-29 controlled by our demo pilot Lieutenant Jacek Stolarek. Przy okazji chciałem przywitać wszystkich Polaków, którzy są tutaj na terenie naszego show. Nazywam się Marcin Boruta, jestem dowódcą eskadry obsługi. Będę miał przyjemność komentowania dla Was tego pokazu. Okay, we can see our MiG-29, and if you wanna hear some words, some greetings from our pilot. MiG-29 was designed by Russian engineers and made first flight in 1977. Typical fighter used to intercept and destroy enemy planes, especially in close combat on short range. His beautiful shape and powerful engines make this aircraft a lethal weapon in hand with pilots just like the other. Pilots present the maximum vertical speed. Maximum thrust of two engines is higher than weight of this plane. So MiG-29 can accelerate in vertical flight. Those engines with afterburners provide maximum speed, 1,700 miles per hour. And what is most impressive, more than 1,000 per second. This is the highest vertical speed of all fighters all over the world. Of course, those times the fuel consumption is very huge, because two engines with maximum afterburner waste 4 gallons per second. Millimeters caliber. It's one of the most powerful cannons. Maximum range is at about 1,500 plus rounds. But of course, the main armament concerns 6 missiles air-to-air, short-range Air-60 and Air-73, or middle-range Air-27 produced by Russians. Our MiGs can destroy ground target by classic bombs, cluster bombs, or unguided rockets. preserve beautiful shape and camouflage of our plane. Now our pilot elements, it slides on tail. In vertical fly, pilot reduce thrust to minimum, plane slow down, stop for the moment in the air and goes down with reverse speed. After that, pilot turn around plane and continue fly in normal direction. Only Russian planes do that. Now our plane presents minimal speed. The minimal speed with the maximum angle of attack. Plane slow down to 120 miles per hour. After that, pilot turn on the afterburners. After turn on afterburners goes up to vertical flight with the maximum thrust engines. Then you can see a mark on all our aircraft. This symbol is very famous, especially here in England, because it was a symbol 303 squadron which had the highest number of shot down German planes during the Battle of the Britain. As the elite squadron in all Polish Air Force, now our squadron has a possibility to use this famous and very important, especially for us, symbol. On the vertical tails are weighted bases. This maximum speed present here. We are not a typical demo team. Our unit is a combat squadron. Main purpose of our unit is defend Polish air border and east side of NATO as an air policing mission. But we have one pilot, Jacek Stolarek, preparing to make a dynamic show to present our beautiful plane. Just like you see, our plane beautiful flight with undercarriage down. That was last element of our show. I hope that you enjoy very good, and the name of our pilot, demo pilot Jacek Stolarek, I'd like to thank you for watching of our MiG. And if you are certain about our job and our plane, please go to our squadron tent. There me